Unemployed and trying to open an account. That's not gonna happen.
Said a colleague at the bank I used to work at. I had left for various reasons, but now I had business with this bank again. When I got there, a former coworker said mockingly,
We don't open accounts for the unemployed.
the bank employee, who used to be my peer, had a nasty smirk on his face.
Time to cut ties. Huh.
Fine by me. You'll regret it though. I responded in anger. In a fit of rage, I decided to close my account, severing ties. This decision would eventually lead to hell for him, but also save him in a way. I'm Mike Simmons. I have a wife, family, and a young daughter, Sophia. I graduated from a prestigious university's economics program and used to work in banking. I met Emily during college.
Hey, you're Mike, right?
Yeah, that's me.
I'm Emily.
At the time, I thought she was just another student at the same university, but her approach made me take notice of her. Why did you talk to me?
I liked how you were dedicated to your goals. And Mike, you helped an old lady the other day, right?
You saw that?
Yes. I knew it had to be you. Above all, you're honest and sincere, and I like that.
Thanks. I was flattered by her passionate approach, and we started dating. My decision to study economics was influenced by my father. He always said, it's people and money that run a company. I inherited that belief from him. My father, Michael, once ran a small business. It was less than 20 employees. Watching my father work hard with this philosophy made me empathize with him and choose the same path. Sadly, he passed away due to illness before I graduated, joining my mother, who had died earlier in a car accident.
I get why you're so straightforward. It's your dad's influence.
Really?
Yes. Let me help you. Not as a replacement for your parents, but I'll support you, Mike.
Thanks, Emily. After graduating, I started working at a bank. I worked honestly and earnestly, just as Emily said.
Mike is really quick at his job.
Yeah, and accurate too.
People like Mike are what you call the elite.
Is Mike single?
I heard he's engaged.
Oh, that's a shame. I thought an elite banker would be nice.
My hard work was well recognized by my peers. I think I have a quicker mind than most that helped me handle task after task efficiently, making me a rising star at work.
Mike's been showing off lately, hasn't he?
Yeah, all the girls are fawning over him.
Seriously, just doing his job, and he gets all this attention.
While I was praised, I also faced some jealousy from colleagues. I knew about their whispers behind my back.
They're just jealous of you.
Jealousy?
Yeah. Working hard and being the center of attention as a rising star like you, Mike, must make others envious.
Emily explained this to me, and I finally understood. So I was the object of jealousy around here, but I was just doing my job. I tried not to let it bother me too much, but there was one guy who was a real pain.
Hey, Simmons.
What do you want, Johnson?
Elite here is so full of himself.
If you got nothing for me, don't bother me. That was Hero Johnson. He seemed to see me as an enemy, always picking on me. I could ignore the others, but Johnson interfered with my work, which was really annoying.
What? Why do you get assigned to the main branch before me?
I don't make these decisions, Johnson. It's up to the higher-ups. Johnson had wanted to be assigned to the main branch, but I got there first, which made his hostility even more obvious. Until then, he hadn't really harassed me, We both just focused on our work. But once my assignment was decided, the backbiting and harassment started. I couldn't understand his obsession with the main branch, but honestly, his presence was becoming a problem for me. For a while, I had a good boss and things were calm. But when Johnson was assigned to the main branch a year later, my peace was shattered.
You don't belong here.
If you got something to say, just say it.
Me? Overthinking things, aren't you?
And then Johnson's harassment started again. He passed by with nasty comments. Oops.
Sorry. Didn't see your shoe there. Accidentally spilled coffee on it.
He dirtied my freshly polished shoes. He also bumped into me on purpose, threw away my documents pretending they were trash, and more. It was getting hard to focus on work. Apart from my boss, everyone else just ignored it. They probably found it bothersome or didn't like me standing out. Then a loan fraud scandal broke out. The client's financial statements that we both managed were tampered with, and it seemed the bank had turned a blind eye.
They say you orchestrated everything.
No, that's not true. I didn't do anything. Who would say such a thing?
That's right. He wouldn't do something like that. There's no evidence.
The accuser remains anonymous to prevent grudges. It's all on you.
I can't believe this. I was being blamed for something I had no part in.
Ha, serves you right. You were so annoying.
Johnson, you didn't.
What are you talking about?
His attitude afterward made it clear he had set me up. I was just doing my job, yet I got caught in this mess. I was fed up with it.
Hey, Mike.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry for causing trouble.
It's not your fault, Mike. You didn't do anything wrong, right?
Yeah, I really didn't. So what are you trying to say?
Do you have to stay in banking?
What do you mean?
I hate seeing you so troubled. Luckily, my job is going well. Maybe you don't need to stick with banking.
Emily suggested I leave the bank, and I agreed.
You quitting is a relief. Goodbye, you unemployed loser.
That was Johnson's last words to me as I left the bank. Emily,
What?
I've got another job lined up, but it might be tough at first. Will you stick with me?
Of course. I was planning to do so all along.
With Emily's support, I started my new job. Eventually, we got married and gave birth to Sophia. It's been a few years since I left the bank. Despite my distaste for the cutthroat competition among my peers, I still had a fondness for the bank itself, and took pride in the work I did there. That's why I continued to use the bank as a customer. Today, I was heading to the bank to use my safe deposit box.
I'll come to pick you up in a bit.
Okay, see you later.
Daddy, come back soon.
Sure, I will. After waving goodbye to Emily and Sophia, who were heading to the park, I entered the bank.
I'll be right with you. Wait, aren't you Simmons?
Johnson. I had run into Johnson again.
Long time no see. Still unemployed, I guess.
No, I'm just off today.
Off today, off every day, right?
I was dressed casually for the park, which made Johnson mistakenly think I was still unemployed, and he started to mock me.
Using the safe deposit box. But an unemployed person can't open an account, right?
As usual, Johnson was being rude to me. Honestly, I didn't want to meet him.
We don't open accounts for the unemployed.
He said with a nasty smirk. I was getting fed up. His past harassment flashed through my mind, and I thought it might be time to strike back.
Maybe it's time to cut ties.
Okay, but you'll regret it.
I won't regret it. Poor jobless people like you should just leave.
Fine, but first let me cancel my safe deposit box and account.
Shoot yourself.
I made my declaration and left the bank.
Daddy?
Oh, you're back early.
A lot happened. I'll tell you about it when we get home. And Emily, I need your help with something.
It doesn't sound good. All right. I won't forgive anyone who hurts you, Mike.
Just take it easy, okay?
Daddy, let's play.
Sure, let's play. The next day, Emily and I were at home. Sophia was with her grandparents.
Thank you for your time today. And I'm truly sorry about what happened.
Please come in. My former boss, the bank's branch manager, John Smith, came to apologize, dragging Johnson by the collar.
Our branch could be in trouble without a major client like you, Simmons. I'm terribly sorry. This was due to my lack of foresight.
Smith was almost bowing, apologizing profusely. I understand your apology, Smith.
But it seems he doesn't think the same.
Emily said that coldly, looking at Johnson, who was being held by the head in dissatisfaction.
Is there something you want to say to my husband?
Who needs an account of someone who caused trouble?
Johnson, do you even understand why you are here?
Let him speak his mind. Branch manager Smith yelled at Johnson, who was muttering without showing any remorse. Emily intervened, facing Johnson.
The money in that account is probably dirty anyway.
Unfortunately for you, I've known this man's integrity since college. You know he couldn't have done such a thing, don't you?
That guy caused the incident, didn't he?
Well, someone set him up, right? Mike would never do such a thing. Was there any actual evidence?
That is.
Emily cornered Johnson with her words. Seeing this, I turned to branch manager Smith. Smith, could you investigate the loan fraud incident? If the truth comes out, I'll reconsider closing my account.
Thank you. I'll look into it right away.
If you need a specialist, let me know. I have contacts.
Yes, of course.
Branch manager Smith agreed and left, dragging Johnson with him.
I'll make a call, just in case.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Of course, it's a perfect opportunity to clear your name. I'll meddle as much as necessary.
You're really reliable, Emily.
Thank you.
With the help of specialists arranged by Emily and the reinvestigation by branch manager Smith, it turned out Johnson was behind the tampering.
Reviewing the security footage, we saw Johnson tampering, and a person introduced by your wife spoke to Johnson's colleagues. They confessed to being coerced by him.
Branch manager Smith came to our house to report this a few days later. And Johnson,
he's been fired, considering everything.
So after years, my suspicion was finally cleared. Thank you for looking into this. I look forward to continuing our relationship.
Yes? Thank you as well.
Don't be so formal. Weren't you my boss?
Now you're a client. I can stop if it bothers you.
Please continue as before.
Understood. I appreciate your continued business.
That's all right. Yes, I continued my business with my former employer. The reason branch manager Smith went to such lengths was because I had opened an account with $15 million in it. After leaving the bank, I started a recruitment service for banking and accounting professionals. Having worked in banking for several years, I wanted to leverage that experience and focus on people handling money, following the philosophy of it's people and money that run a company.
Leave the finances to me. I'm doing well as a lawyer.
Thanks, Emily.
In return, let's make an exclusive contract with your company.
Sure, I'll count on you then. With Emily's help as a lawyer, I successfully started my business. The first year was tough, especially in gaining trust from companies. Some acquaintances from my banking days knew about the incident and were skeptical, but by being honest and straightforward, I gained their trust.
Working with you, Simmons, was the right choice.
I'm glad I could help. Now, my service is highly regarded even for executive recruitment. The $50 million account belonged to my company. I can't thank you enough, Emily.
I've been helped a lot by you too, Mike. The blessings we're receiving now are proof of how earnestly you faced everything.
You think so? After things stabilized, we had a wedding and received blessings from many people. Leaving the bank allowed me to find happiness. And for that, I was grateful to Johnson. I was a bit concerned about his future. Despite the harassment and betrayal, I had seen him do his job meticulously several times. If it weren't for my involvement, I think Johnson would have been a decent guy. So I always kept him in the back of my mind. It really is Johnson. One day, while checking the new registrations at my recruitment service company, I found a familiar name. There was no mistaking it. It was Hero Johnson's name. It seemed he had registered for our services after being fired from the bank. Career consultation. Today, huh? All right. I decided to attend Johnson's career consultation meeting myself.
What? Simmons, you work here.
I do more than work here. I founded this company. As I handed him my business card, Johnson looked surprised.
You started a business after being forced out of the bank. You didn't give up.
Yeah, with my wife's support, it's grown this much.
That's really impressive. Simmons.
Johnson stood up and bowed deeply to me.
I'm truly sorry for everything I did, for the harassment and for framing you. I really am sorry.
I wanted to hear an apology. That's enough. Let's talk about work.
Thank you, Simmons.
We then had a detailed discussion about his approach to his next job. From the conversation, it was clear Johnson had changed and was sincere about working hard. Honestly, being fired is a big negative image.
I understand.
So it'll be a small company with few applicants. Is that okay?
Of course, I'll do any job if I'm hired.
All right. I'll talk to them about your situation.
Thank you.
I introduced him to a small company that had trouble attracting applicants, explaining everything, including the loan fraud incident that led to my downfall.
Simmons, do you believe he's changed?
Yes, he's sincerely remorseful and committed to working honestly. He was always meticulous and skilled.
I see. Even with his past, we'll accept him if he's sincere now.
Thank you. Johnson got the job at the small company. With his high skill level, he soon became a relied upon member of their team. Hey, Johnson, I've always wanted to ask you something.
What is it?
I invited him for a drink once things settled down. He agreed, and I decided to ask him something that had been bothering me. Why did you harass me so much? It started around the time I got assigned to the main branch, right?
Yeah, honestly, I was jealous. You got assigned to the branch I wanted, the one my parents told me to aim for.
Your parents? Johnson looked a bit troubled as he explained.
My dad was a banker too. He always raised me to be a banker and to become successful like him.
That sounds tough.
Really, I wasn't allowed to do much besides studying.
Didn't you ever rebel?
When I was little, I once skipped studying to play, and I got locked in a closet and lectured. That became a trauma for me, so the idea of defying never crossed my mind.
I was shocked. I didn't know much about Johnson, but it seemed he had his own struggles.
My mom always said my dad was right. It felt like they were just imposing their values on me.
That must have been hard. Were you unhappy?
Kind of. I was always under pressure, and it was tough. When I saw you, who seemed to have it easier, get assigned to the main branch first, I just couldn't accept it and acted childishly. I'm really sorry.
Apology accepted.
Sorry. And, well, my dad found out about someone more talented than me and told me to bring you down.
Quite the father. Apparently, he was taught to outdo anyone more skilled than him, just like his father did.
But now, I've been fired because of the incident, right?
Yeah.
So I was disowned and kicked out because I'm no longer a banker.
Are you okay?
I'm fine now. The company let me use the staff dormitory after I explained my situation. Honestly, I feel relieved.
Really?
Yeah, I finally feel free from my parents, able to work on my own terms.
As long as you're happy, that's good.
I'm grateful to you. After being fired from the bank and disowned by my parents, I was in despair. Then you reached out to help me. Thank you, truly.
It's mutual. Your work performance is enhancing our company's reputation.
I'm glad I can contribute.
Johnson smiled. It showed genuine happiness, unlike his unpleasant smirks of the past. Emily, can we get help from the person who assisted us last time?
Sure. What's up?
I told Emily about Johnson's situation when I got home.
That sounds like an interesting development. I'll contact them right away.
Thanks to her efforts, Johnson's father was investigated, and multiple wrongdoings were uncovered. His father fell from grace and ended up with debts due to compensation.
Simmons, you were behind this, weren't you?
What are you talking about?
Really? Anyway, they contacted me.
Really?
Yeah, they said, you're our son. Help us pay off the debts and support our living expenses. I rejected them, saying your son no longer exists.
Be careful, just in case.
Yeah, I haven't told them about my current company, and the boss said they couldn't connect them to me.
Then you should be fine.
Thank you, really.
After talking with Johnson, I received a call that a man and a woman claiming to be his parents came to our company. Excuse me, are you looking for someone our company introduced?
You're the president. I'm Johnson's father. Tell me where that foolish son of mine is.
I can't disclose personal information.
Personal information. We're his parents.
Yes, I've heard about you from him. Please stop obsessing over a son you disowned.
What?
By the way, I was the one who had you investigated.
You did? What have you done?
If you lay a hand on my husband, calling the police won't be the only thing I do.
Emily appeared just as his father was about to hit me.
We have reports and evidence of what you've done.
Who are you?
I'm Simmons' wife and a lawyer.
A lawyer?
And I represent your former son. Be prepared for what's coming.
Emily was impressive as she sent them away. I was captivated by her. Thanks to her efforts, Johnson was able to completely cut ties with his parents and was very grateful. He's working earnestly now. It seems the daughter of the company president took a liking to his new attitude. He recently told me they started dating.
If we ever get married, will you come?
Of course. I was relieved to see Johnson happy. I need to thank Emily's contact.
Yeah, actually, we're treating them to dinner soon. Want to join?
Are they okay with that?
Yes. They're a husband and wife detective team. They're coming together, so it's fine.
Then I might take you up on that.
How about a family picnic? They have a son about Sophia's age.
That sounds nice. Thanks to Emily, our social circle expanded. The detectives, the Ians, were quite an interesting couple.
I'm Ethan Ian. I run a detective agency.
And I'm his wife, Sarah.
I'm Emily's husband, Mike.
I've heard a lot about you from Emily. Now, Mike, a voice recorder is essential for those crucial moments.
And ideally, having video footage would be great.
They handed me a small voice recorder and camera, and I couldn't help but chuckle. By the way, how did you and Emily meet?
We were high school classmates. She's always been set on becoming a lawyer, so it's handy having connections in detective work and credit investigation agencies. We contacted these two when they said they were going to be detectives.
Interesting.
We gather lots of evidence.
We promised to be allies to the vulnerable. We couldn't attend your wedding, though, so it's really the first time meeting you, Mike.
You didn't invite them. You seem close.
We're good friends. They were overseas around the time of our wedding.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they were on a detective training trip.
And we couldn't make it to the wedding. We had our wedding overseas, too.
I wonder what detective training involves.
They're a bit unconventional, but that's what makes it interesting.
Definitely. It's a bit unusual, but enjoyable to talk to them. The Ians were smiling, and it naturally brought a smile to my face, too. So, you've said a lot about me, huh?
Oh, nothing in particular.
Emily tried to cover up in a fluster, making me think she must have been venting about me.
Emily is totally smitten with you, Mike.
All she does is gush about him.
Hey, stop.
Hi, thank you, Emily. So, she was gushing about me. I remember Johnson once saying, "You turn into a total romantic when you talk about your wife." In a way, we might be a similar couple. As we deepened our friendship with the detective couple, our daughter Sophia and the Ian's son Ryan became good friends too. I noticed them holding hands and smiling.
I'm going to be your wife, Ryan. Then I'll protect you, Sophia.
Wait, hold on. Isn't this a bit too early? I panicked when they started talking about marriage. When I mentioned this to Smith, who visited us recently, he laughed heartily.
I'm glad everything's working out. Sorry. If I had been a better supervisor, I could have prevented all this.
You couldn't have done anything at that time. You weren't the branch manager yet.
Even so, I should have noticed.
After the incident, Smith stepped down as branch manager, feeling responsible for it. He thought about resigning, but was persuaded by the bank to start over. Now I'm more into training younger staff, Smith said. I owed him a lot when I was his subordinate. When I was newly assigned, he patiently answered all my questions and was good at motivating me with advice and praise.
Johnson, if you have time to be sarcastic, focus on your work. Your work is well regarded for its meticulousness. I'm counting on you too.
Yes.
He noticed Johnson's harassment and was the only one to reprimand him while others ignored it. Johnson obediently followed Smith's advice since he also provided support. Even during the time I was falsely accused, Smith stood up for me, arguing with the higher-ups because there was no evidence. He's always been polite even after I became a client, and he always reprimands properly when needed. That's the kind of person he is. Oh right, Johnson mentioned he wants to invite you to his wedding.
I'd definitely like to attend. It seems a bit premature, though.
They're both in their first relationship and are quite affectionate with each other.
It's good to see them happy.
Eventually, we would all be invited to celebrate their wedding. It seems Johnson is now even more dedicated to his work. Of course, I'm not falling behind either. I'm constantly striving to help more people find the right job fit. Well, this time. Oh, but there are exceptions. The name that caught my eye was Johnson's father. He actually registered with our company. I asked someone to check and then requested to have his registration deleted.
He's got some nerve.
Maybe he was trying to find information on Johnson.
He didn't even attend the wedding.
He's always been controlling Johnson's life. These are just desserts. I plan to continue facing my work honestly and straightforwardly.
It's because you're honest, Mike, that everyone trusts and relies on you.
It's because Emily was honest with me that we could be so happy together.
Haha, thank you.
And thank you from me as well. Honesty really is the best policy. Since then, Johnson and I occasionally get together for drinks. Sometimes Smith joins us, and we share stories about work and recommend things to each other. I talk about games, Johnson discusses anime and manga, and Smith talks about novels.
Honesty is the best policy.
Johnson now often says this at our gatherings.
That's right. So, you should honestly celebrate Sophia saying she wants to be a bride, right?
That's different.
Is dining on your mom yummy, Mr. Jobless?
That's how an interviewer, who I had unexpectedly run into at a fancy restaurant, mocked me. Just the other day, he had insulted me persistently during an interview. After graduating from university, I had spent time abroad, and this interviewer scorned me for not being in the United States, even labeling me as jobless.
You're not doing him any favors by spoiling such a jobless guy, ma'am,
said the interviewer, taking advantage of the fact that I didn't retort due to the upscale nature of the high-end restaurant. He even began lecturing my mother. He didn't expect that a few minutes later, he would be told by my mother, "Turns out you're the jobless." My name is Mark Harris. Dressed in a cool suit for a job interview, I'm standing in front of a large building. Today, I'm here for an interview with a company in this building. I saw my watch 9:40 am. The interview is due to start at 10 o'clock. I arrived in front of the building 20 minutes early as planned, feeling a sense of satisfaction. I'm really impressed that trains and buses are on time in the United States, as I recently returned from living abroad. I left the United States 5 years ago, right after graduating from university. I enrolled in the economics department at my university, but not because I particularly wanted to study economics. I chose a university that was easy for me to commute from home. The only reason I ended up in the economics department there was because it was the one my grades allowed me to get into. However, I felt increasingly out of place with every class, realizing this wasn't what I wanted. I had a dream, but somehow I had given up on it as unachievable. So, I just drifted through university. That's when my mom got a job overseas. She was a career woman, always on the move, so her absence from home was nothing new. Ever since I was young, my mom was often away from home, but I never really felt lonely because my dad was always at home. In contrast to mother, my father is a writer. He seems to be a popular writer to some extent, but my father is extremely shy and has a hard time being in front of people. He hardly ever appeared in public, earning the nickname the Phantom Writer. Some even speculated the writer for real was a robot, denying his existence. By the way, since my father dislikes having his photo taken, the author's photo for his works is always a picture of the cactus he is growing. Despite their differences, my parents were inseparable. When my mom had to work overseas, my dad simply said that he needed to find his passport and pack their bags, indicating his easygoing decision to accompany her. My dad always boasts that his job can be done anywhere in the world, as long as he has an internet connection. My mom, understanding Dad's nature, said that she had known he'd say that and suggested him to renew his passport first. If it were overseas, honestly, I also wanted to go, so I raised my hand and told my mom to take me together. But she immediately rejected it, persuading me of the importance of graduating from university. And just like that, my dream of living overseas was shattered. Even after that, my mom continued to travel all over the world for work, and Dad always went with her. My parents left me and our home in the United States so that I could continue to live there, and they moved overseas at ease. Left alone in the family home, I was initially resentful but soon resolved to make my own way abroad. Somehow, I managed to graduate from university, and instead of finding a job, I spent time living abroad in France and Italy. During my time in France and Italy, I only worked day jobs and part-time, which makes me realize now that I virtually had no employment history. I don't know why, but belatedly, I couldn't help but feel a flicker of doubt, wondering if everything was going to be all right. With these anxieties in my heart, I reassured myself that everything would be fine because I'd passed the document screening. I then headed towards the company for the interview, once again encouraging myself.
Mr. Harris, please come this way.
I checked in at the reception and am guided to a conference room. This time, I'm interviewing with a reasonably large apparel company called Sakura Blooms. The company primarily focuses on products for women and has an overwhelmingly female workforce. There are only a few male employees, and it seems I'm the only one taking the interview this time. Was it because I was applying for a mid-career position? But the job posting said they were hiring 3 people. As my anxiety grew, the door of the conference room where I was suddenly opened with a click.
Sorry to keep you waiting. Let's start the interview.
The one who appeared was a man whose name tag said Carter. I was initially surprised by his attitude as he entered, but what shocked me even more was his appearance. A gray suit that you can easily find at a big box store. It was so wrinkled, I wondered how it could have been stored to get that way. Even without a close look, it was obvious the buttons were coming undone. And the tie, where on earth do they sell those? It was a strikingly bright fluorescent pink, with a cute illustration of a chick with large, eyelashed eyes right in the center. Where on earth do they sell such ties? Cart staring at his tie, he flashed a grin and said, "This tie. It's unique and stylish, isn't it?" I could only offer a polite smile. His hair was slicked down, either with too much wax or perhaps he hadn't bathed since yesterday. There was a distinct lack of cleanliness about him. I was quite shocked by Carter's reaction. Then he looked at me and sighed. When I was suddenly asked, "You're a guy, right?" I could only reply with a hesitant yes, I am. I wondered if he mistook me for a woman.
Do you understand that our brand primarily focuses on women's clothing, and still you applied for the job?
Yes, of course.
Why? There are plenty of men's brands out there. Why did you specifically apply to ours?
Oh, is the interview already starting? With that thought, I shared the reasons for my application that I had come up with myself. I'm interested in working at your company to deepen my knowledge about clothing and fashion.
Oh, okay.
A remarkably interested response came back. Is this an interview? What's going on here?
What other brands do you know? You're not just aware of our brand, are you?
Certainly not. If your company targets the same demographic, Heartwarming and Earthshop have recently become popular. They offer products with a casual yet work-appropriate design, incorporating sophisticated colors and styles. If we target a slightly older age group, Ing is popular for its wide range of colors and ease of reuse. When I answered, Carter showed a momentary surprised expression. He had a look on his face as if he didn't expect I had been studying women's apparel brands. It's a job interview, so you should study for it.
Well, you should be able to answer that much. Now, let's talk about your work history. What's your work history?
Yes, I've been overseas until recently. I've experienced various jobs in France and Italy.
Full-time positions. Your resume shows a blank in the work history section.
Oh, yes. I mainly worked part-time jobs.
So, is this your first job interview then?
Yes. This is my first job interview for a full-time position. When I answered honestly, Carter looked at me with complete disdain in his eyes.
You were abroad, but you still end up as a part-timer. Were you just living off your parents' money?
No, it's not like that. I had worked part-time jobs during my university years to save money for my overseas experience.
You know, people who say they were mostly abroad are kind of loose compared to us Americans. It's a bit worrying. They might be doing their job with a lack of diligence, and I can't trust them.
Well, I'm also an American, but...
And you, talking all high and mighty about having been abroad, but that's nothing to brag about. I've thought from your appearance that you're a bit weak, and lately there have been too many guys like you. Men should have a strong presence.
And he starts eloquently describing his ideal image of a man. I've been listening, but it's starting to become a bit of a confusing conversation. What on earth am I being told?
Besides, I hate to say it, but for a guy to actively pursue a company targeted at women, it seems like you have ulterior motives. If you have nothing like that, then prove it.
Even if you tell me to prove it. How am I supposed to prove that? You're a guy working in a women's apparel company, aren't you? So, we're in the same boat, aren't we? I thought to myself. But before I could say anything, Carter chuckled and said, "What's the matter? Can't answer that." I realized it was hopeless. Even if I miraculously passed this interview, I couldn't work with someone like him. Feeling that way, I briefly said, "I've had enough. I don't want to answer anymore," and stood up. I turned my back to Carter and began walking towards the door of the room.
What? Running away? That's what these overseas folks are like.
He sneered at me with a smirk on his face. He was a typical unpleasant person. I wondered if he was trying to provoke me and make me react somehow. Even if I was overseas, I didn't expect to be treated like this. I can't work with someone so discriminatory and biased. I declined a job offer, I said, and left the meeting room. As I left, I could hear him still saying, "Young people these days are so arrogant." The next day, as anticipated, I received a rejected notification for the job. My first job interview in the United States had ended abruptly. A few days later, I found myself at my mother's favorite high-qualified restaurant. My mother had returned to the United States, and of course, my father had returned as well. Now, 3 of us are living together in our family home. This restaurant is my mother's favorite. She conducts business negotiations while dining at this restaurant, especially when it's so important she can't fail. She also dines out here with my father for special occasions.
Unfortunately, Dad couldn't make it, but I'm happy you're here, so let's enjoy this circumstance.
My mom hasn't been to this site for a while, and she's excited to be here again. Additionally, my father couldn't make it because he had a deadline for his work.
Well, sometimes you don't get a job offer after an interview. Don't lose heart. Based on what I heard, the problem is on their side.
My mother said with a smile, and I realized her intention. I see. She brought me here to cheer me up and encourage me after I'd been brooding about that interview for the past few days. What a wonderful mother I have. I was deeply moved. I said I would decline it by myself, but the truth is, I was a little down about it. Fun time flies. I thoroughly enjoyed the prefix menu at the restaurant and the precious time with my mother. "It's on me, so go ahead and wait for a sec outside," my mother said. And as I followed her instructions and changed my shoes at the restaurant's entrance, I saw some people coming in. Among them, there was a person wearing a familiar tie. It was a tie with a glaring fluorescent pink background and a cute illustration of a chick with long eyelashes and big eyes in the center. I had seen that tie recently. Carter. Today, he's wearing a slightly more decent suit than the other day, but he still can't cover the wrinkles, you know. More than that, the tie is way too conspicuous and has an incredible presence. That chick even appeared in the dream of the day I interviewed. It's likely to come out again tonight. Then it seemed like Carter also noticed me. He said, well, isn't this Mark, the overseas returnee we interviewed the other day? What a coincidence, being able to come to such a nice place on a weekday. Overseas returnees indeed stand out, huh? Have you gotten missing American food? Did you remember how to munch on that? He was clearly picking a fight with me. That last part sounded like baby talk. Don't bother me. It's so annoying even just he remembers my name. As I was pondering what to say, my mom appeared and said, "Sorry for keeping you waiting, Mark. I got a souvenir for Dad. It took time a bit. Sorry about that." In her hand, she's holding a paper bag. This is probably the sushi from this restaurant. While I was eating, she said, "Dad is also a big fan of the sushi here. Should we buy some as souvenirs?" It seems like she really ordered it. "Is this Mark's mother?" Carter suddenly asked. Against my hope, she replied, "Yes, that's right." "Why?" As I supposed. May I ask, is it you who paid the restaurant bill?" He suddenly asked my mother. What's going on? What is he trying to say? Yes, that's right. My mother replied. Hi, I knew it. he exclaimed dramatically, sighing deeply. Then he looked at me and said, "Is dining on your mom yummy, Mark, the jobless?" Furthermore, he said to my mother, "It's no good even for you. If you spoil this jobless guy, he will turn out worse." My mother and I were left speechless. Carter himself had this attitude like he was saying something great, as sporting a smug look.
Mark, is this the person who interviewed you the other day?
Oh yeah. I don't know why he's here. As my mother and I were secretly discussing this, my mother smiled and said, "Got it. Leave it to me." Oh, this mom's face is dangerous. Battle mode activated.
Excuse me, but who are you referring to as a jobless guy?
Of course, you know that's your son. You've really spoiled him to the core. It seems that your son tried to join our company, but unfortunately, he couldn't break out of being the jobless. Carter laughed loudly. My mother had a beaming smile on her face, but she was clearly radiating an aura of anger that was palpable. Even I, who was standing side by side, noticed it. Why doesn't he realize right in front of her?
Carter, what's going on?
I heard a male voice coming close. Looking in the direction of the voice, a man in a suit was approaching us. Compared to Carter, the suit is wrinkle-free and looks clean, and he's carrying off a suit in a color that suits him well. At first glance, I got the impression that he was someone in a higher position, like CEO.
President Adams, how are you today, sir?
Greeted Carter. Oh, he really is the president. In the next moment, the man addressed as the president looked at my mother and exclaimed, "President Harris."
Oh, President Adams, isn't it? It's been a while. I didn't expect to meet you before the upcoming meeting.
As my mother said this with a beaming smile, President Adams responded, "I would really appreciate your assistance in the upcoming meeting." While bowing graciously, President Adams, no matter how you look at it, appeared humble towards my mother, and the power dynamic was clearly in favor of my mother. President Adams looked at Carter and said, "Carter, offer your greetings. This lady is President Harris, the head of that striped group."
The Striped Group.
The Striped Group is a company that oversees dozens of apparel manufacturers in the United States. In fact, my mother is the president of the group, holding the position of the head of a so-called major company.
The Striped Group.
Oh, as I mentioned before, we're going to come under the management of them. Make sure to greet her properly.
Really? That's news to me. I asked my mom.
That's right. Starting from this spring, we're in the process of moving that forward now. Oh, President Adams, this is my son.
I greeted President Adams in person.
Are you President Harris's son? I'm always grateful for her help. It's a bit embarrassing, but our business has many vulnerabilities and, well, to cover those, she's taking care of it.
I see. Although it looked like the business was doing well from the outside, it seemed that it wasn't the case in reality. And so far, Carter had remained silent. When I looked at him, his face was turning paler than before. As President Adams said, "What's the matter, Carter? Why don't you greet?" My mother cut in with her words. No, it's quite all right. We already exchanged greetings earlier with this gentleman, so there's no need. Besides, Carter is one of your employees, isn't he? My son actually had an interview at your company recently, and it seems they took good care of him, my mother said with a beaming smile.
Wow, really? Does that mean your son will be joining our company? That's fantastic news, and it's great to have such strong talent on board.
No. It seems my son actually declined the offer on his own. I only heard about it from him, but it seems he didn't quite meet the standards over there, according to the person who conducted the interview.
Really? But your son's been overseas.
Oh yeah. Unfortunately, it seems he didn't meet the standards of yours, so he didn't seem to have a connection with your company. During the interview, and even just now, the interviewer referred to my son as a jobless.
What? Did our Carter really say something like that?
Yes, well, it's true that my son is unemployed while he's job hunting, so he's somewhat like a jobless, but it's a bit much for someone to say that, and it makes me wonder about the company's future.
When my mother deliberately said that, President Adams turned pale too and glared at Carter.
Carter, how dare you?
No, President Adams, this is…
Carter seems to be trying to come up with an excuse, but his face is turning increasingly pale, and he's completely stumbling over his words, repeating, "It's not like what you think." If you're interviewed with that kind of attitude, I think no one would want to work. Here, I chimed in. I don't know how much President Adams is aware, but Sakura Blooms Inc. has a reputation, not in a good way, on the job information sites. Some reviews mentioned that there was a harsh interviewer, and even if you passed the interview, C in the HR department has been getting trashed in reviews. Also, the turnover rate was unusually high. That's why I was curious about what it was like. So I decided to try it out, and after that interview, I understood. Probably, they had been rejecting people in a similar manner all along, I guess.
For the past few years, we've been short-handed in a way that's rarely seen. I always thought we had a shortage of manpower, but it seems it was because of him. I left all these things to Carter, so I didn't know anything about the situation. I'm terribly sorry for that.
President Adams lowered his head towards me. Judging by his attitude, it seemed he really didn't know about the interview. He's not at fault. Even seeing President Adams in this situation, the Carter in question remained silent the whole time. President Adams is someone to look up to, so Carter, why don't you apologize too? Seeing the situation get out of hand, I couldn't help but speak up. Suddenly, Carter burst out, "You lazy bum. Don't get smart with someone older than you," and lunged at me. But I easily dodged him with a quick move. Carter slid smoothly and suddenly tumbled onto the floor.
Well, President Adams, if this person isn't dealt with properly, our company might not be able to welcome yours.
Laughing merrily, my mother spoke, and President Adams nodded solemnly in response.
Of course, Carter, you're fired as of today.
Carter, lying down, lifted his face, but his complexion had already turned ashen.
Oh dear. Oh my, it seems like you've become a jobless, dear.
My mother chuckled at that. A few days later, an article appeared in the financial newspaper with the headline, "Women's apparel manufacturer Sakura Blooms Inc. joins the Stripes Group." In addition, several other apparel and textile companies were acquired, leading to more companies coming under the management of the Striped Group. Generally, joining a group doesn't change the management lineup of each company, but I heard that Carter was the only one who got fired. Apparently, the reason why Carter conducted interviews in such that manner was simply because he disliked anyone who seemed more competent or superior to himself. He wanted to fulfill the feeling of "I'm the one choosing here." President Adams really trusted Carter, so he left all personnel matters to him, only requiring retroactive reports. "I'll be more involved from now on," he said, reflecting on the situation. Afterward, I ended up joining my mother's company, the Striped Group, as an employee. However, I didn't give up on my own dream. In fact, I was more determined than ever to pursue my dream by working in this company, learning about clothing, and dealing with customers in the stores. A few more years passed, and I handed in my resignation to my mother, who was the president. "President Harris, I'd like to resign." When I said that firmly, my mother looked at me.
Do you already have plans for the next one?
"I want to pursue my own dream. I've made plans for it."
Good. You should do what you love. Work hard, and I'll support you.
With those words from my mother, I left the Striped Group. And then, I finally launched my dream brand called Compilation. I handled everything from design to sales by myself. In fact, during the 5 years I spent studying in France and Italy after graduating from university, I underwent training to become a designer. While studying at university's economics department, I had continued to think about clothing design on my own and even made clothes. However, I wanted to learn in a more formal setting. So right after graduating, I decided to go to France. Thanks to my mother's connections, I was introduced to world-renowned designers in both France and Italy, where I worked part-time and continued to study. The reason I had no work history was because of this background. I studied design in France for 3 years and Italy for 2 years each, gaining recognition from my respective mentors, and then returned to the United States. I cannot thank my mother enough. She had introduced me to my design mentors, and I'm also grateful to my father for allowing me to pursue my passion. Actually, I wanted to learn from another company before starting my own brand, so I applied to Sakura Blooms Inc. Now let's just forget about that. My knowledge of business from university turned out to be quite useful when I started my own brand. I realized that there were no wasted experiences in life. The concept of my brand is break down gender barriers. It's about wearing whatever you like regardless of gender. If a man wanted to wear a skirt, he should be able to, and women should be free to wear men's clothing. I embedded these ideas into my clothing designs. In line with this era, we plan to primarily use materials that consider SDGs and initially limited to online sales. In fact, I didn't have enough money to open a store. To my delight, my brand seemed to align with the current social climate, and I quickly gained attention. I received heartwarming comments from consumers like, "Thanks to Compilation, I've learned the joy of choosing the clothes I love, and I'm happy to have more options in clothing selection." Furthermore, after just 1 year, I was able to open a real store in a local shopping mall, and I could afford to hire employees. While it was a store in a rural area, more people came with the intention of buying my clothes. I was also fortunate enough to be featured in many fashion magazines, both domestically and internationally, which further boosted my brand's sales. Having established an apparel brand, my next dream was to participate in Paris Fashion Week. I have been to Paris Fashion Week just once when I was a child, accompanied by my mother. The memory of that moment is still vividly etched in my mind. Glamorous clothing, makeup, and models strutting confidently. And finally, the designer who greets us. It was a dazzling world. At that moment, following my gut's instinct, I decided that someday I would see models wearing my designs on that same runway. That was the moment when I first dreamed of becoming a designer. I continued working towards that goal, and a few years later, my brand was finally able to participate in Paris Fashion Week. In that glamorous moment, my excitement soared as I realized I could participate. I went wild, shouting, "Woohoo!" And the whole day, the employees at the main store had a blast together. Of course, the next day I had a hangover. I ended up spending busy days every day preparing for Paris Fashion Week, but I didn't mind it at all because I believed my dream would come true. Rather, the feeling of enjoyment was dominant. I was often caught up in preparations, even staying overnight at the store. My parents were worried, but more than that, they warmly watch over me. Finally, the day of Paris Fashion Week has arrived. The show was a great success, and my brand became internationally famous. I was called to the runway by a model who was wearing clothes from my brand. While walking and waving my hand, I heard someone shout, "Mark." When I turned toward the voice, I found my parents there. My mother was waving her hands enthusiastically with a big smile, while my father stood beside her, looking a bit embarrassed, waving his hand timidly. I was touched by my mom's appearance there. Moreover, my father, who rarely appears in public, had come all this way for me. The fact made me so happy that I couldn't help but tear up. I realized that I want to stand here again and again next year, the year after, and for the years to come. I think that would surely be worth repaying my parents. My parents raised me with respect, letting me pursue my passions. I owe it to my parents for who I am today. To tell the truth, at one point, I almost gave up on my dream of becoming a designer when heading off to university. But now I'm here as a designer, launching my own brand. I realized that if you don't give up and keep putting in effort, dreams will come true. I believe that looking at things with rigid, outdated values in today's world is not beneficial for anyone. For example, concepts like being manly or being womanly probably won't hold in the future. Incorporating and embracing diversity is what gives rise to the potential and growth that follows. I pledge in my heart to continue creating fashion that embraces diversity and incorporates various elements in the future. High school grad, get out of here already.
Today is the inauguration ceremony for the new company president, but when the department manager, Matt, spotted me, he came rushing over tensely. "Matt, was there any prior notice about high school grads being prohibited from attending today?" When I tried to argue, he just laughed disdainfully.
"You think we're going to send out company-wide notices just for you? All right, just get out of here already."
I see. I left the hotel venue and entered a nearby cafe, waiting for the appropriate time. A few tens of minutes later, my smartphone rang. Thomas, hi.
It's not hi. Where are you right now?
I'm at a cafe near the venue. Matt ordered me to leave.
Geez. Anyway, just come back here right away.
I gulped down my coffee and headed back to the hotel venue once more. So, actually, my name is Alex. I'm 35 years old. I work as a regular employee at a major electrical manufacturer. One day, at the company where I work, it was decided that there would be a change of president. It's a common occurrence in large corporations for the founder, who is elderly, to resign, and for their son to succeed them. As Thomas, the new president, had already been a director and vice president within the company, and was well liked among the employees, the succession was relatively positively received by the staff. As a result, the inauguration ceremony for the new president became a grand event, with not only business partners and presidents of similar industries invited, but also all employees. Of course, as one of the employees, I headed to the hotel venue to attend the inauguration ceremony for the new president, but at the entrance, I bumped into Matt, the department manager from the same department. I had a bad feeling inside, and that feeling turned out to be spot on. As soon as Matt saw my face, he smirked condescendingly and said,
"Alex, I can't believe you managed to come here looking so shabby. Talk about thick-skinned, huh? That's what we say about guys like you."
I've gotten used to being on the receiving end of such sarcasm and snide remarks. Matt often flaunts the fact that he attended a prestigious university and regularly looks down on those with less education, such as high school graduates. As a result, his treatment towards me as a high school graduate was terrible. Being accused or insulted by him was an everyday occurrence. Well, I'm sorry. Indeed, I don't own custom-tailored suits like Matt. I mostly have suits from the suit section of department stores, all bought at discounted prices. However, I regularly send them for dry cleaning and iron them to smooth out any wrinkles. Even though I made sure not to appear embarrassingly shabby to others. Even then, I don't think I look so shabby as to stand out among the other employees passing through the entrance. Well, I know that any counter-argument I make will be returned 100-fold, so it's best to just let it slide. I quickly apologized and tried to pass by him, but at that moment,
"Hey, where do you think you're going? There will be plenty of high-status individuals at the president's inauguration ceremony, you know. There's no way an uncultured, poor high school graduate like you should be allowed in. You're out of place here, so just leave already."
Saying so, Matt firmly waved his hand as if to drive away something dirty. It seemed like he was in a bad mood that day, as he was persistently bothering me more than I anticipated. Of course, it's a well-known fact that all employees have the right to attend the inauguration ceremony of the new president. Even if it's an order from my immediate superior, I can't just obediently comply with it. Prohibiting high school graduates from attending was not mentioned in the employee newsletter distributed beforehand. Upon hearing that, Matt smirked and said,
"Obviously. In a big corporation like ours, there's only one idiot high school graduate like you. Why would we bother making a special announcement just for you? Ignorant fools like you would only tarnish our company's reputation. So just leave already."
But I tried to continue my rebuttal, but he showed no signs of listening whatsoever.
"Hey, how desperate are you to attend? Are you just here for the dinner? This is why poor, regular employees like you are so unfortunate. There's no seat for you here, so go home now and eat some cheap and tasteless food."
It seemed like he really didn't want me to go inside under any circumstances. I asked for confirmation one last time. "Am I correct in understanding that your statement 'go home' is to be taken as a direct order?"
"Of course. Don't make me repeat myself. It's not a place for a high school grad like you."
Matt stated that firmly. As one of the employees, I was eager to attend the inauguration ceremony for the new president. However, I couldn't force my way through after being ordered by my immediate superior. "I understand. I will comply with the order." With those words, I turned back, and he watched me leave with a triumphant expression.
"You don't even have to bother coming to the company anymore. Useless people like you make no difference, whether you're here or not."
Listening carefully to those words, I left the hotel venue. Then I entered a nearby cafe and quickly grabbed a simple dinner. Feeling hungry as time passed, and to ensure I wouldn't miss any important communication, I decided to stay relatively close to the hotel. I ordered a hot coffee and spaghetti napolitan, then settled into my seat to take a breather. Matt was incredibly persistent and insulting today. Perhaps he was feeling uplifted due to the inauguration ceremony of the well-respected new president. I'm used to being ridiculed for being a high school graduate, but just because my educational background is low, I highly doubt I've ever caused any trouble at work. Despite the frustration, I've been putting in years of effort to prove myself through my achievements. However, I've been realizing that overturning Matt's mindset is much more difficult than I initially thought. Since I was 5 years old, I've been living alone with my mother. After my biological father disappeared, she raised me single-handedly ever since. My mother, who became pregnant with me at the age of 20, got married without any work experience. So, even though she had to raise me alone, it wasn't easy for her to find a well-paying full-time job. While juggling part-time jobs, she saved money to ensure I could pursue my education as much as possible. However, when I was 17 years old, the strain took its toll on her health, and she became unable to work. I understood from a young age that we didn't have the money for me to attend a university. So while others around me were becoming university students as though it's a given, I had to accept that I would have to work as a high school graduate. My mother apologized to me many times, but I never considered myself unfortunate. I had seen firsthand all the efforts she had made for me until then. Now it's my turn. I want to be able to support my mom. That's what I've been thinking. After graduating from high school, I started working part-time at a nearby convenience store. As I wasn't particularly intelligent, I knew that even if I looked for work with just a high school diploma, I wouldn't find any decent job opportunities. I worked multiple part-time jobs just like my mother did before, sacrificing leisure time to work tirelessly every day. The only respite I found was occasionally learning boxing at the gym owned by the owner of one of my part-time jobs. It was because the owner said that my physique was suitable and expressed a desire to teach me. I didn't excel particularly, but it was the first time I had been deeply involved in a sport since my time in the high school club, before my mother fell ill. The sense of satisfaction from feeling stronger with every effort was enjoyable, making it my only source of pleasure. But by the time I turned 19, I couldn't afford to say such things anymore. My mother's illness worsened, and she was forced to be hospitalized. I had been diligently saving the money I earned from working, but it was simply not enough. Considering the possibility of a long hospital stay in the future, I realized that I needed even more money. After that, I took on even more work and quit boxing. I worked outside every day except for sleep and meal times, but it still wasn't nearly enough. Out of desperation, I eventually found myself turning to gambling. At the age of 20, I started spending my free time at the horse racing track. There were times when I won and times when I lost, but overall, I was winning more often. Gradually, the idea of working seriously started to seem foolish to me. Should I just quit all my jobs and devote myself entirely to horse racing? One day, as I began to entertain such unstable thoughts, I went to the racetrack as usual. Having conducted thorough analysis with my own methods, I bought my bets with confidence and took my seat. As the race began, it unfolded just as I had anticipated, and there was no suspenseful moment that made my palms sweat. Amidst the crowd shouting loudly with excitement, I found myself strangely calm. Despite being in dire financial straits, I should have been more anxious. Perhaps I had a strange confidence that said, I can do this. Then suddenly, the person sitting next to me caught my attention. While most of the spectators stood up, shouted, and cheered, only the person next to me and I remained seated, hardly moving at all. That's why, for some reason, I couldn't help but be intrigued by that person. Glancing briefly at him, I saw a man in his late 20s to early 30s, wearing an expensive-looking suit and his hair neatly styled. To be honest, he seemed completely out of place in the surroundings. He didn't seem like he was in dire need of money, so I couldn't help but wonder why he was there in the first place. Was he simply enjoying horse racing as a hobby, regardless of the prize money? Or perhaps he was amused by us, looking down on us as we tried to make money through gambling. His true intentions were completely inscrutable, even as I observed him. Then our eyes met. Whoa, no, I must have stared too much. Feeling awkward, I quickly averted my gaze. However, the man smiled warmly and started a conversation.
Hello. It's my first time here, and I'm not quite sure what to expect. Did I seem out of place?
Despite appearing older and seemingly more well-off than me, I was surprised by how humble the man seemed. And before I knew it, I found myself opening up to the older man I had just met, which surprised me even more. Then we hit it off and talked until we ran out of betting tickets. The conversation mainly revolved around horse racing, my unique analysis methods, and my feelings about horse racing, all seemingly trivial matters. However, since they were topics I couldn't discuss with people in my personal life, such as my mother or friends, I felt a great sense of relief. Being aware that we would never meet again allowed me to speak candidly and freely. I thought that would be the end of it, but several hours after parting ways at the racetrack, I unexpectedly encountered the man again in a surprising manner. The hometown where I've lived isn't exactly known for its safety. It's the kind of rural town where you might expect to see characters straight out of retro TV shows, rough-looking youngsters who wouldn't seem out of place in a gang. I have always had a good physique and a somewhat intimidating appearance since birth, so I have never been a victim of such incidents myself. But as I was leaving the racetrack and heading to the nearest station, I spotted a salaryman being mugged. Honestly, while I'd rather not get involved in any trouble, seeing such a clear incident unfold in front of me makes it impossible for me to just ignore it. "What are you doing? I'll call the police." In response to my voice, the attention of the thugs naturally turned towards me.
"You got a problem, punk. Beat it."
Dodging the thug's punch, I swiftly countered with a punch aimed at a vulnerable spot, knocking him out cold in no time. Even though it had been years since I quit boxing, taking down a few thugs was like a walk in the park for me, thanks to my experience in the ring.
I'm saved. Thank you very much.
I realized that the person who said that to me was the man I had talked to at the racecourse earlier, and I was truly surprised. Of course, the person seemed quite surprised as well. He seemed extremely grateful to me and invited me for a drink as a token of appreciation. We entered a nearby bar, and when he gave me his business card, I recognized him as a director of a major corporation that even I was familiar with. Although our conversation flowed smoothly and I felt a sense of camaraderie developing, I couldn't shake the feeling that our worlds were fundamentally different. However, the time spent with that person, who was so approachable and made no distinction in class or age, was incredibly enjoyable and didn't make me feel the difference in our backgrounds or ages at all. Before I knew it, we had become drinking buddies, and since then, we have occasionally kept in touch and shared drinks together. Balancing multiple part-time jobs gradually wore me down, and I was plagued by a slight anxiety about whether it was okay to entrust my life to horse racing. During this time, my personal life was falling apart, but whenever I was with him, I could forget about the hardships. On one particular day, something happened. As usual, while drinking, we were engaged in casual conversation when he brought up something unbelievable.
Would you consider joining our company?
I couldn't believe my ears. I was momentarily taken aback by the literal meaning of those words, but as someone from the bottom rung of society, I couldn't fathom being invited to such a prestigious company, no matter how close we were. I thought it might have been a prank due to the drinking session, or perhaps I misheard. However, it seemed that neither of those was the case, and he genuinely seemed to be serious about inviting me to the company. No, wait a moment. As I mentioned before, I only have a high school diploma and no experience as a full-time employee. I appreciate your sympathy and understanding of my financial struggles, but I don't think I can be of any help. I declined, saying so.
I do value you as a drinking buddy, that's for sure. But I don't think it's wise to mix business with our friendship.
However, he made it clear. After that, he talked to me about the business acumen he found in our conversations. As a high school graduate, I couldn't possibly have any knowledge of business. No matter how much I trust my drinking buddy, I couldn't accept it at all. That's what I thought. However, that person said the following.
When we first met, I was at the racetrack out of curiosity, but I was feeling quite overwhelmed by the difficulty of achieving results in that environment. And then you said this to me.
You want a tip? For me, I guess it's about not trying too hard to make money. When you buy while thinking about making a profit, impure farts interfere and you can't make proper predictions. So, I believe in doing it calmly. Even if the immediate returns are small, it's more beneficial in the long run.
I had studied business management extensively, but at that moment, I realized that I hadn't figured out how to reconcile with my own heart.
Honestly, I had forgotten that I even said such a thing. Moreover, being expected to have business acumen based on just that one chance event felt like pressure to me.
Management isn't just about knowledge, it's about instinct. And you undoubtedly have that. Of course, it's okay to say what you can't do, and I'm not asking you to dive into management right away. For now, I'd like you to gain experience in sales, and then see how you feel about our work. And if you come to feel that you want to stay with us and contribute more, eventually I hope you'll consider joining our management team and helping us out.
He said that. In all honesty, this conversation made me very happy and grateful. I still needed a lot of money to cover my mother's hospital bills. But honestly, I was reaching my limits with the exhaustion of working nonstop every day. But I couldn't afford not to earn. I wonder if I could hit the jackpot in horse racing. I couldn't help but feel incredibly anxious about how I was going to live on while entertaining such a dreamlike idea. So, regardless of how it came about, the opportunity to become a full-time employee at a major corporation felt like a dream come true. However, being a high school graduate remained the biggest source of anxiety for me. However, that person sensed my anxiety and said to me,
"That diploma stuff is garbage. I only graduated from a technical high school myself."
So I made up my mind. And once I made that decision, I've been striving for 12 years to live up to those expectations. This marked the beginning of my encounter with President Thomas. As I finished eating my spaghetti and took a sip of coffee, My phone rang. "Hi, Thomas." As soon as I called, he answered with a flustered tone.
"It's not hi. Where are you right now?"
Thomas and I are still drinking buddies even after joining the company. Since he got married 10 years ago, we've been getting along well as families. So, I think I have a pretty good understanding of the atmosphere in his personal life, but I've never seen him so flustered before. I'm at a cafe near the hotel. As I emailed earlier, I was ordered by manager Matt to leave because there's no seat for a high school graduate, so I left. Upon hearing my words, Thomas sighed in a somewhat relieved manner.
"It's refreshing in a way. Or rather, what can I say? It's good to be obedient to your immediate superior. But from today onwards, things are going to be different, right? You could have said something like, 'I'm a director now, so I can follow your orders,' couldn't you?"
Certainly. It's as he said. As promised when I joined the company, I've become a director at the same time Thomas takes on the role of becoming the president. Matt, who has been making sarcastic remarks to me all this time, will now become my subordinate. But just because the position changes doesn't mean I will change myself, so I couldn't muster the courage to be overly assertive. Despite saying that, I couldn't deny feeling a bit eager to surprise and humble Matt while waiting at a nearby cafe in anticipation of Thomas' call.
"Today is also your inauguration speech as a director and the vice president. After you finish your coffee, come back immediately."
Thomas instructed me, prompting me to return to the hotel right after finishing my coffee. The expression on Matt's face when I was introduced as the new director was almost comical, even from a distance. Nobody in the company knew about the relationship between Thomas and me, so the venue was filled with shock when I was introduced. However, Matt's reaction stood out among them all. Although he didn't know, he seemed to regret his recent verbal attacks on me, looking pale and shaken. I wasn't planning any power play or revenge, but I hoped this incident would make him reflect on his actions. While it's undeniable that I, as a high school graduate, was the one who suffered the most humiliation, it was clear that other employees, including those with lower educational backgrounds than Matt, were also experiencing discomfort. As the vice president and director, I want to contribute not only in terms of business acumen, as expected by Thomas, but also in creating an environment where all employees can work comfortably regardless of their educational background. I believe that, precisely because I'm a high school graduate, there are things I can uniquely bring to the table. Afterward, Matt, the department head, was found guilty of obstructing my inauguration ceremony with selfish lies and was accused of harassment by several employees. As for me, I didn't involve myself personally and only testified about what I had experienced. I chose not to participate in a meeting to decide on his punishment. As a result, he was transferred to a regional factory and demoted to a security guard position, which were quite severe penalties. Despite his high capabilities, I hope this serves as a lesson for him to realize the importance of how one approaches their work, rather than being judged solely based on education and background. As for me, I'm still a rookie as a director. I'm learning the ropes from my predecessor, Thomas, and gradually expanding my capabilities. Whether I'm a director or a vice president, my education level as a high school graduate remains the same. However, there's no longer anyone who belittles me for it. I believe it's because people are now more interested in how I approach my work rather than my education level. So, I'm determined to continue giving my best without feeling ashamed of my education level, and do everything I can with my current abilities. What a nostalgic feeling. This day, after finishing our greetings to clients, Thomas and I were driving in the car. As we passed by a familiar horse racing track, we decided to make a nostalgic visit.
I never imagined back when we first met here that we'd end up working together like this.
His words resonated deeply with me. You're right. Back then, he mentioned that I had business acumen, but what I'm truly grateful for is how he picked me up when I was at my lowest. I can't thank him enough. Thanks to him, my mother was able to undergo her hospitalization smoothly, and her major surgery was successful. Now, she's living healthily and happily. Even recently, when she heard that I was appointed as a director, she cried tears of joy. She understood well the efforts I had made. In the end, both of us lost that day. There was no problem in visiting the racetrack with nostalgic feelings, but knowing that he had encouraged me to bring my horse racing method to the company, I felt a desire to win since I had made the effort to come. I'm sorry, we lost. Upon my spontaneous apology, Thomas said,
I don't care about making profits. That's not what matters. I value nothing more than a commitment to facing things honestly and sincerely in front of us.
Whether it was because he sensed my feelings or not, Thomas continued to reassure me, promising to help me however he could. Now, I want to devote myself wholeheartedly to my work so that I can be of help to Thomas.
You were in charge of handling a $30 million deposit, weren't you? I'll take over for you.
I was forced to quit my job due to repeated harassment from the manager. It seemed he was gleefully eager to snatch away the customer I had been managing, smirking with delight at the prospect of me leaving the bank. I quickened the pace of tidying up my surroundings, trying to hide my arms that wouldn't stop goosebumps, as I replied, I'm sorry, but the customer specifically requested me, so it's not possible.
What? Even if he requested you, you're leaving anyway, so someone has to take over. I'm saying I'll take it over. Be grateful.
He must have been desperate for this case so much. So it seemed like he's so money-minded that he doesn't show any interest in listening to me. If you can take it over, please do. I'm fired, so I'm heading out. As my last day at the bank was coming to an end, a phone rang loud enough to wake the dead sounded. That call ended up costing the manager everything. My name is Kevin, and I'm 36 years old. Having lived a life that could best be described as the epitome of average, with no noteworthy drama, I graduated from college and worked at the bank, dealing with customer relations. I'm just a plain guy whose only redeeming quality is being serious. Ever since I joined the bank, I've been doing the unglamorous work of visiting companies to discuss future transactions and pitching our services to potential new customers. Living my life as an average Joe, I'm not the type to captivate people with my stories, and naturally, I lack any slick negotiation skills, so I mainly handle reliable small to medium-sized enterprises. My peers, fluent in Spanish and leveraging their extensive networks, are making a splash with innovative styles of sales to large corporations, boasting far more impressive achievements than mine. While I spend a week visiting 2 or 3 influential small and medium-sized businesses in the countryside, my peers are simultaneously pitching to more than 10 large corporations. Feeling the urgency of becoming a dead-end employee, there was a time I wanted to succeed in making big sales to large corporations like my colleagues. I've aspired to glamorous jobs, studying sales and negotiation techniques overnight, but I never managed to apply what I learned effectively, and all my efforts ended in vain. I'll never forget the day I realized that each person has their place where they can truly thrive. I have my way of working, and trying too hard to be something I'm not just ends up looking foolish. The job I handle is also part of what supports the bank, and since I've pledged to do my best in my role, I've grown to love my modest tasks and work hard every day. However, drama seems to strike when you least expect it. Something happened that shook up my unremarkable life. I would welcome a positive change with open arms, but instead, I faced a turn of events so undesirable, I wanted to cross my arms and reject it with all my might.
Starting today, you guys will have me, Gary, as a new manager.
Typically, transfers happen in April, but now it was already June. On one humid day, Gary, the new boss from another branch, was transferred to us. Unlike me, sweating profusely in the muggy heat, he didn't sweat a drop, didn't blink, and his sharp gaze was intimidating.
I was the #1 guy at the Manhattan branch.
Speaking slowly, as if threading a needle, was our new boss.
No one has climbed the ranks to manager as quickly as I have.
It seems Gary thinks of himself as an elite. He's turning 34 this year, 2 years younger than me, yet he's already in a managerial position, so it's understandable why he would think so. Gary seems to be quite meticulous. He started individually greeting each employee after greeting everyone in general. While I was working on preparing materials for my next sales visit on my computer, it seemed to be my turn, as Gary approached me from behind and spoke up.
How old are you now?
He asked mechanically, without taking his eyes off the materials I was preparing. 36. Feeling increasingly uncomfortable, I minimized the file I was working on, and only then did Gary finally look at my face. However, his eyes were lifeless and filled with a frightening intensity that made my skin crawl.
2 years older than me, and still just a grunt.
He placed his hand on my shoulder and whispered deliberately into my ear.
Hey, old fart. How long are you going to keep making these pathetic reports?
His tone was clear, as if addressing an elderly person, yet it contained a hint of sarcasm. Despite my irritation, I realized arguing with such a pointless person was a waste of time and calmly responded, I just do the job given to me to the best of my ability.
Old man's best effort isn't worth a dime to me, but hey, do your best.
Finally removing his hand from my shoulder, Gary moved on to the next employee. I shook off the lingering weight of his hand from my shoulder and enlarged the document I was working on to continue. A few minutes later, Gary, carrying a mountain of documents, suddenly dumped them haphazardly on my desk.
Hey, you look like you're not busy. So get your work done properly.
The stacked documents contained confidential information of major corporations and high-value customer data, which was supposed to be handled by the manager originally.
Be grateful I'm using an old geezer like you.
Glared at with the intensity of a sharp blade, I felt intimidated and reluctantly started to organize the top document on the pile. Seeing this, my colleague in the next seat quickly offered to help.
Kevin, you have urgent matters to attend to this week, so I'll help out.
Despite my unremarkable performance, I was known in the office for being solid and quick with my tasks, and everyone was kind to me. Thanks.
Hey.
Just as I was about to pass the documents to my colleague, Carrie, with a face like a demon, charged at us like a boar and grabbed my wrist, holding the documents with a grip that seemed intended to crush it.
I asked you, not someone else. Don't even think about getting off easy by asking for help.
He approached me, gritting his back teeth and red-faced as if steam was about to come out. My colleague looked at me with a nearly crying face, filling me with an incredible sense of guilt. Yes, I'm so sorry.
Remember, I specifically asked you because you're the one with the most time on your hands in this bank.
Yes, I'm very sorry. Gary, seeing me respond with a lowered head and a hoarse voice, grinned creepily and added insult to injury by piling up even more documents on my desk.
If you have the time to ask someone else, you can do this too.
After dumping another pile on my desk as if to seal the deal, Gary quickly gathered his things and vanished somewhere, probably to grab lunch. Being accustomed to cooking for myself and being frugal, I bring my own lunchbox, while Gary seems to enjoy eating out every day. And no matter how much I toil over these documents, it's Gary who will handle the negotiations, and of course, all the credit goes to him. Gary, adept at maintaining appearances and adept at charming with cunning rhetoric, operated under the philosophy of the ends justify the means, with a sales style focused solely on personal gain, without regard for the disadvantage of others. Once Gary was out of sight, my colleague, who had been looking worried all along, came jogging over.
I've decided, I'll help you out.
The kindness of a teammate made me feel a warm sense of gratitude.
I can't stand watching this. I want to talk to the branch manager.
No, really, you don't have to go that far for me.
Now that Gary's not around, let me quickly tell him something.
Ignoring my protests to stop, he hurried off to the branch manager Tom's office, and I hastily followed.
Tom, the way Gary treats Kevin is just too harsh to watch.
Breathing heavily, he passionately pleaded my case with eyes narrowed and earnest.
Well, but Gary has been bringing in good sales numbers, so I really can't say anything against him.
But those sales figures come thanks to the documents Kevin prepares.
Documents could be prepared by anyone. Sales figures are the real measure of individual ability, so I can reprimand Gary over something like that.
The already troubled manager frowned even more, sizing up my colleague with an unabashed stare.
But
my colleague tried to counter, but realizing our efforts were futile, I stepped forward, interrupting him while showing understanding. Understood. We won't press the issue further. Sorry for any trouble.
Good, as long as you understand.
Relieved by my concession, Tom quickly excused himself from our presence. While I appreciated my colleague's feelings, a mix of resignation and acceptance of the reality of working life settled over me. As the rainy season ended and the real heat of summer began, Gary, as usual, went to a negotiation with the documents I had prepared. My documents had laid out the current situation of our customer and planned the upcoming schedule on a monthly basis in graphs, aiming for a plan where both sides could slowly but surely make a profit. However, Gary, after reviewing my documents, seems to have mixed in his own ideas and secured a deal that significantly favored us more than planned.
I've just closed a huge deal this time.
He stomped around the office with such heavy steps that you'd think a monster was walking, making his presence known. Catching my eye, he smirked maliciously and strutted straight over.
Want me to tell you how I made it a success?
He said, mocking me with eyes murky as a polluted river.
You probably wouldn't understand, being the old fogey that you are. But I'll tell you anyway.
Seeing that I didn't argue back, he seemed to get even more pleased with himself and started to blabber.
We're gonna bring in the latest AI and have it take over all the teller tasks that humans used to do.
What?
Surprised? Well, someone like you, an old fogey, wouldn't even think of using AI like that.
He laughed dryly, full of pride. My plan also included introducing AI, but not to cut down on staff, rather to improve operational efficiency. The customer's main strength lay in its robust workforce, particularly the teller services known as the jewel in their crown, representing the face of the company. The approach Gary unilaterally proposed would lose this vital component. Certainly, the personalized proposals made to each customer at the teller service take time because they're tailored to each individual. Thus, implementing AI could theoretically benefit both parties in terms of numbers. Moreover, the customer has always been somewhat traditional, harboring a strong fascination for cutting-edge technology, eagerly desiring the incorporation of something as advanced as AI. However, the operation of AI as proposed by Gary would result in a one-size-fits-all plan for every customer, potentially dealing a significant blow to the customer. On the other hand, this bank is actively working on AI implementation, and by creating a case where staff is reduced through AI introduction, it can receive a substantial grant from the government as an AI-encouraged company. That would put the counterparty at a disadvantage.
What gives you the right to have an opinion?
He glared at me like I was a bug, snorting disdainfully.
As long as it makes money, that's what matters.
Did Tom approve of this too?
Yes, of course. With this much profit and a grant from the government, why not?
Duh.
Besides, we're using cutting-edge AI, and the counterparty was thrilled about it.
I felt that Gary hadn't mentioned the drawbacks during the negotiation, and was appalled by his overconfidence, deciding to wash my hands of whatever happens next. A few days later, an incident occurred. On a scorching summer day, with a relentless chirping of cicadas, a man stormed into the bank, yelling loud enough to crack the ground. It turned out he was from a company Gary had unilaterally decided to negotiate with using my documents.
What the hell is going on?
He scanned the employees inside with a glare as fierce as an erupting volcano, breathing heavily.
Well. How can I help you today?
Gary approached with a feigned cluelessness, rubbing his hands together.
The problem is this deal is unacceptable.
The man slammed the crumpled documents he was holding onto the desk.
I'm terribly sorry. May I review the documents?
Upon receiving the crumpled documents, Gary didn't even glance at the content before shockingly pinning the blame on me.
Indeed, I can see why you would be upset with these documents. They were prepared by a staff member named Kevin at our bank.
He coolly shifted the blame onto me with a breezy expression. The customer turned towards me with the force of a Grim Reaper wielding a scythe.
How do you intend to take responsibility for this?
I'm terribly sorry. While it's true I prepared the materials, I understand that Gary from our company had a completely different proposal.
That's just an excuse.
I'm terribly sorry. With a glare so intense I felt I might be crushed, all I could do was apologize. Enjoying the exchange, Gary clapped his hands together with exaggerated enthusiasm, suppressing a smirk.
On this occasion, it was our Kevin who has been extremely rude. The responsibility will, of course, all be on Kevin.
Continuing to rub his palms together, he added,
Given the situation, Kevin will be fired.
What? Faced with Gary's decisive momentum, the customer's expression softened a bit.
If you're going that far, I might reconsider.
Oh, thank you for your generous heart.
As Gary proceeded to settle the matter on his own, I couldn't stay silent and hastily interjected. Gary, that's too much, and it's too soon for you alone to decide.
Consider my words as if they were the branch manager's.
I deeply felt that no words could reach Gary, who was absurdly tyrannical and overbearing. When the branch manager Tom arrived, clearly aware something unusual was happening, he attempted to walk past us pretending not to notice, so I shouted towards him in a last-ditch effort for hope. Tom.
No need to shout. I can hear you.
He came over to us reluctantly, waving his hand as if shooing away a mosquito. Gary made a decision on a deal that led to a complaint, and now I'm being fired just because my documents were used.
Of course, all the responsibility falls on Kevin.
If Gary says so, then it can't be helped.
The customer also said they would be satisfied if Kevin were to be fired.
Gary could barely contain his laughter.
As expected of Gary, perfect in handling the customers.
I felt the blood drain from my body. Without proper investigation, to be framed and fired so easily by this bank was futile. Holding back the urge to yell out in frustration, I managed to say calmly, "I understand, I accept being fired." In the heavy atmosphere, only Gary was grinning with pleasure. After seeing off the customer, Tom and Gary glared at me as if I were a criminal.
Well, that's the situation. So you don't need to come in starting next month.
That's brutal.
You have 2 more weeks. I hope you can make amends in that time.
While Tom hurriedly left the scene, Gary approached me in slow motion, as if in a movie.
Unfortunately, no one needs an incompetent old relic like you.
With that, he burst into laughter he could no longer contain and almost skipped away from me. 2 weeks flew by, and at the end of the month, I started the resignation process. Having been a customer relations officer, I was privy to a lot of confidential information that needed careful handling. Among them, a certain customer I was solely responsible for was originally one of the small to medium-sized businesses I managed. However, as their business thrived and the managed funds increased, it reached a deposit of $30 million. Thankfully, the company's president always expressed gratitude for my attentive listening and dealings, refusing any proposals from others, no matter how attractive they were. Valuing and sincerely engaging with customers was natural for me, and seeing the president's appreciation taught me the importance of doing what is considered standard. Handling the confidential documents, entrusted to me because of trust, was a significant challenge. Then, Gary came to me with an unusually bright smile, quietly approaching.
"Kevin."
His tone had changed completely from when he declared my firing, now sickeningly sweet.
"You were in charge of handling a $30 million deposit, weren't you? I'll take care of it until the end in your stead."
Trying to hide my goosebump-covered arms, I quickened the pace of tidying up my surroundings as I replied, "I'm sorry, but the customer specifically requested me, so it's not possible."
"What? Why would someone like you?"
He exaggeratedly raised his hands, widened his eyes, and took a step back in mock surprise. "I've had a long relationship with the customer, and there's a trust between us. Thankfully, they've said the business succeeded because of my dealings. The transaction was based on the trust between the president and me, but I'm fired now, so it's no longer my concern."
"That $30 million account. I'll be taking it over. So it's none of your business."
He must have been desperate to get his hands on that account. Gary, with eyes glittering as if being so money-minded, had no intention of listening to my story.
"If we nail this deal, I could finally become a branch manager. Heck, even a department head isn't out of the question."
He stretched his arms wide, looking up to the sky as if he had already achieved it. Gary, lost in the thrill of success, was daydreaming about which luxury brands to splurge on, but his dream didn't last long. Immediately after, the sound of a single ringing phone echoed loudly enough to wake someone up. That was a plot twist like something out of a movie, coming from an unexpected source.
"Hey you, Gary."
Tom, on phone duty, hurried over, looking frantic.
"What's the matter, Tom?"
"That $30 million account Kevin we're handling for is about to be snatched by a rival bank."
"I don't follow what you mean."
Snapped back to reality, Gary shrunk like a turtle, hands instinctively moving close to his ears.
Why are you letting such an important customer slip away?
That's Kevin's fault. Everything will be settled once he's gone.
Let's hear more about this.
Tom and Gary began to argue, loud enough for customers at the counter to hear. I had already decided to switch jobs to that rival bank, and the $30 million customer wanted to follow me, deciding to move their deposits there. Disgusted by their childish quarrel, I was deeply relieved to be leaving this bank, finishing my paperwork and walking out. 3 months after the turmoil, as autumn deepened and the leaves turned beautifully, I found myself working as a customer relations officer at the new bank, just as before. Despite not dealing with the glamorous large corporations I once dreamed of, I'm still handling small and medium-sized enterprises, sticking to my sincere sales style and steadily building trust. This bank appreciates my approach, and a promotion has already been decided for the near future. One holiday, I was invited out to eat by a former colleague from my old bank.
Ever since Kevin left, things have turned pretty bad.
With a gloomy face and distant gaze, my colleague shared this bit of news. Apparently, the argument between Gary and Tom during that commotion was overheard by customers, leading them to lose trust and leave.
We're desperately trying to attract new customers every day since getting chewed out by headquarters, but it's hopeless.
My colleague said with a dry laugh, looking close to their limit. So, I invited my colleague to join the bank I had switched to, and I saw a flicker of life return to her eyes.
Tom and Gary were demoted to handle new customer acquisitions as a form of taking responsibility, and they're so busy they barely have time to sleep.
Developing new customers, the most challenging and demanding task, seemed a fitting punishment for them. They were so arrogant before, they've got what was coming to them.
Exactly. And they still haven't changed their condescending attitude, failing to secure any contracts.
I hope they're regretting it a little.
More than a little, I reckon. Both of them are told they'd be fired if they don't secure the next contract.
I see. Watching the bright red autumn leaves fall, I was struck by how quickly time passes. No matter how successful one might appear, losing sight of what truly matters can lead to painful consequences. I vowed to continue living honestly and straightforwardly, no matter what anyone else might say.
I heard that the groom's older brother, Kevin, has only graduated from high school. To think that someone without a college degree would be part of our family. We come from a lineage that has produced prominent figures in various fields, and having someone uneducated like this among us is nothing short of disgraceful.
I felt more ashamed of being present in that situation than the harsh words that were spoken. Until now, I was content not being in the spotlight, but I had to acknowledge that it's probably how I appeared to others, as someone not standing out.
Danny, I'm counting on you to look after everyone.
My father said, calling me to his side alone. My father, who was at the peak of his career, fell ill with a rare disease despite being young and in love with 3 children. His condition progressed rapidly due to his youth, and he quickly lost his vitality after being hospitalized. "You're the only one I can ask this of," he said, his eyes welling up with tears. I held back my tears and nodded firmly. He roughly tousled my spiky hair and hugged me. His arms were as thin and fragile as tree branches. I think he knew his time was limited. That day was the last time I had a conversation with my father. From that day on, this Smith household consisted of my mother and 3 children. My mother, frail with illness, often pushed herself too hard for our sake. My brother Kevin, 2 years younger than me, and I often took care of the housework.
Bro, are you really not going to college because of us?
Kevin asked me as I was about to graduate from high school. I was taken aback by his direct question, but chose my words carefully to sound casual. It's not because of you guys. Uncle told me he'd find me a good job. I want to start working and get out into the world as soon as I can. I answered with a smile, without looking at Kevin standing behind me. Truthfully, I like studying and wanted to continue my education, but I wanted to stabilize our life with our sick mother. I wanted Kevin and our sister Anna to have the opportunity to go to college and live a life without hardships. I was the only one who could make that happen.
You're different. You have good grades. You could even aim for T University.
He mentioned the name of a challenging local university. He felt helpless that his brother's future was being cut short because of him and his sister, a feeling he couldn't do anything about. I understood his feelings because I had been in the same situation. That's when I decided to work right after high school. I don't need to go to college. My goal is to make us all happy with what I earn. You'll have to study the things I can't, Kevin. Well, with your grades, maybe that's impossible. I joked, and Kevin looked down, his lips pursed. I thought he might cry, but after a pause, he answered without tears, "Got it," and started studying intensely from the next day. From being one of the lowest in the class, in 3 months, he was in the top 10. On the day of the last high school test, I received my decent report card and left the school.
Hey!
I was surprised to see Kevin waiting for me at the front gate, holding out a paper. It was his end-of-term report card, showing he was first in all 5 subjects. I looked at him in astonishment, and he had a serious, yet slightly embarrassed expression.
I did what I could for now. I'll keep studying hard also for you, bro. So sorry. But I'm leaving the job part to you. After high school, I'll work too and help you.
Kevin said, bowing his head in gratitude. He suddenly seemed more grown up. I pictured him studying late into the night. If you can do something like this, do it regularly, bro. Seeing my brother Kevin working so hard, even while talking back, I know I have to do my part too. Working after high school graduation was tough, with many challenges and not everything going smoothly. Some unkind people as well as those who pitied our single mother family. Amid all the things I couldn't do, I somehow managed to find a job on my own, learning the ropes by closely watching others at work. Maybe seeing Kevin studying hard even when I came home late motivated me to keep up with him. He continued to be the top student in his grade. That's why it was hard to convince him to go to college instead of working like me. I work, and you study, Kevin. Study hard, go to a good school, and then help Anna with her studies. I want her to go to a good place too. I persuaded him, and got him enrolled in a high school even more prestigious than a high school, the top in the county. By that time, Anna had started elementary school, and our mother, despite her instability, was managing to do some work, reducing the household burden. I hoped they could go not just to high school but to college too, to study whatever they wanted. So, I worked as much as I could to save money. That's why, when Kevin timidly asked during his sophomore year in high school if it would be all right for him to go to college, I responded, "Of course, you should." Challenged difficult universities without even attending cram school, deciding not to attend any prep courses and not to apply to any private colleges as safeties. He wanted to get a full scholarship as the valedictorian. Kevin, who visited the library daily without fail and read a single college prep book until it was tattered, had an intense focus. We were all anxious until the results came out, and when we learned he was accepted, our family hugged each other in joy, especially for Kevin and me, since we both felt that each of our efforts had led to this achievement. It was even more gratifying than if it had been our own. When I first became a manager with just a high school diploma, Kevin got his dream job at a pharmaceutical research institute and left home to live in the company dormitory. He said to me, "I could push myself because of you, bro. Thank you. I'll keep working hard." Our father had died from a rare disease. Kevin's dream was to research and develop a treatment for it. A dream I shared with him before I gave up on further studies. And then, this fall, Kevin came back home to announce his engagement. He was marrying Lisa Miller, a girl who had visited our house once before. She was an only child who often exchanged emails with Anna, saying she envied having siblings. Just imagining her as my brother's wife made me feel somewhat shy. While listening to his news, he said, "I want you, bro, to give a speech at the wedding. I am what I am today because of you, and I'm proud of that." But hearing that the wedding would be in a prestigious hotel because of Lisa's family's social standing made me hesitant. Lisa, the daughter of a company president, would have relatives and guests of a certain caliber at her wedding. While it was fine for our mother, Anna, and me to attend as family, the idea of giving a speech felt daunting and possibly inappropriate. But it was my brother's big day, a once-in-a-lifetime event. And above all, I was touched that Kevin said he was proud of me. I decided to take on a significant role. On the wedding day, the weather was clear. It was a fresh autumn day with dazzling fall colors. I wore a formal suit, something I'm not used to, and headed to the wedding venue, extremely nervous. I kept stumbling over my words while talking to the taxi driver, and Anna teased me, saying, "The star today is Kevin, not you, Denny. Why are you more nervous?" My mother was already anxious before we even arrived at the venue. Anna, attending a wedding for the first time, wore a new orange chiffon dress. I got emotional thinking that she might be imagining Anna in a wedding dress someday, and had to distract myself by looking outside. In the family waiting room of the luxurious hotel, we were restless as we waited for the ceremony to begin. That's when a man approached me. My mother and Anna had just left the room to greet Lisa, so they weren't there.
"I'm John Miller. Sorry for not meeting you at the pre-wedding gathering,"
he said, offering his business card. I realized he was Lisa's father. I'm Danny, Kevin's brother. It's an honor to meet you," I blurted out, almost bumping my head in my haste. I hadn't met John before because he couldn't attend the pre-wedding gathering due to his busy schedule. The more I try to avoid any mistakes, the more anxious I become.
"Kevin is such an excellent young man, graduating from T University. It's a relief for our family that he's marrying our daughter."
I felt like I was being praised alongside Kevin.
"And you, big brother, are you married yet? You should marry soon. I can introduce you to someone. Which university did you attend?"
I was taken aback as I hadn't been asked that recently. I'm a bit embarrassed to say, but I didn't go to college. I started working early to support my family after we lost our father. I took care of earning money while Kevin studied and Anna helped with housework. I explained. John's eyes narrowed briefly. I guess my impression isn't too good, but I can't lie either. I tried to recover the conversation by saying, I might not have done well myself, but my sister Anna has just been accepted into nursing college. Though the atmosphere didn't change much, he replied, "Your sister must be very talented too." He seemed like he wanted to say more, but someone called him, and he bowed his head and left. I hope my presence doesn't ruin Kevin's relationship with his future Phil. As I was thinking this, my mom and Anna returned. Watching them excitedly talk about Lisa's beauty and Kevin's handsomeness, I almost forgot about my worries. So, when John started his speech as the bride's father, looking intently in our direction, I felt no discomfort.
"The Miller family has produced many distinguished individuals, with everyone typically graduating from prestigious universities. We've always wanted our daughter to marry someone like that, which is why we encouraged many arranged meetings, hoping she would continue the lineage of excellent genes,"
he said. I sensed trouble brewing. As he focused solely on academic achievements, in introducing Kevin, he only mentioned from the public high school known for its high university entrance rates. He went on to T University on his own and now works at a national research institute. Without touching on his character or personal stories, he talked about Lisa's education from kindergarten to a prestigious private university as well.
"I was relieved that my daughter, Lisa, could marry such an outstanding young man as Kevin Smith. But,"
he gave me a spiteful look, and I had a bad feeling.
"it seems that the groom, Kevin, has an older brother who only finished high school. To think that someone with just a high school education would be part of our family. As a family that produces leaders in various fields, having such an uneducated person is a disgrace to us. If I had known earlier, I would have stopped it. But it's too late now. It might be unpleasant for you all, but he's scheduled to give a speech next, so please bear with us. While he may not be able to marry, we hope for excellent children from Kevin and Lisa,"
he concluded. I was named and felt like vanishing from embarrassment. I should have known better than to come to a wedding that was out of my league, and I felt depressed. I thought about asking someone else to give the speech, since there was still time, while my mom and Anna were visibly angry at the malice. That's when it happened.
Can you take back what you just said?
I looked up to see Kevin in his tuxedo, holding the microphone. He was visibly angry, a vein throbbing on his temple.
I was able to pursue my studies because my brother worked hard for our family. To say that he's uneducated, please retract your statement and apologize.
Kevin said, his voice trembling with anger.
Our father died of a rare disease, and our dream as brothers was to research it. My brother was more talented than me, but he worked for our family. That's why I worked hard to fulfill our dream. When I got into college, I thought about attending a university closer to home and working part-time to help my brother. When he found out, he scolded me.
Kevin spoke assertively.
He asked if I didn't trust him, that my achievements were proof of his efforts. He told me not to worry about money, to do what I could to the fullest, to study and research wherever I wanted, because that was my role.
I remembered scolding him, telling him not to lower his university choices out of consideration for me.
The person I am today is because of my brother. If you won't apologize, I won't call you my Phil.
Kevin said, shaking with anger. Lisa then took the microphone from him, soothingly patting his back while glaring at her father.
Education, education, education. I've put up with it for so long, but I never thought it would come to this. Treating even your own daughter like a pawn. I've had enough. I'm sorry to show you this unsightly scene.
Lisa, still poised and beautifully dressed, offers an apology. The wedding venue was filled with murmurs of shock.
I thought I was doing a final act of filial piety by having a grand wedding for my family. But it was a mistake. To have such a person as a father is embarrassing. Though we've gathered you all here, we will cancel the wedding. Please enjoy the meal and then feel free to leave.
She firmly states her apology and then apologizes once more.
Have you all gone mad for a man who's just a high school graduate?
Her father rushes toward his apologizing daughter, pointing at me. I was shocked, but obviously so was John. Caught off guard.
Just to let you know,
Lisa began, facing her father.
The man you've been ridiculing, Danny Smith, is the next president of the major client company you have been struggling to secure a contract with.
She then turned to me with a smile, asking, "Right.
What? A high school graduate becoming a president?"
John turned pale, looking at me in disbelief. I realized it when he handed me his business card earlier. He was the president of Miller Inc., a client of our company. In terms of our business relationship, we had the upper hand and could terminate the contract if necessary. Miller Inc. was at a delicate phase, reconsidering its transactions due to some unpleasant rumors. I kept silent, not wanting to spoil the happy occasion, which now seemed deceptive. The company I joined after high school, a small-town factory, saw a dramatic increase in sales after securing a patent for precision parts. We rebuilt the worn-down factory building, replaced all the machinery, and now had profits to spare. Though we produced small parts, the patent earned us favoritism from various companies. Miller Inc. probably wanted to secure a contract with us, but it's challenging for them because our company has strict trading conditions. I built my career steadily, working my way up from a high school graduate. When it came to the patent, it took years to convince the stubborn craftsmen and company executives. who initially wouldn't listen. It was me who handled all the tedious applications and formalities because they said they'd agree if I did everything. The truth is, we didn't want our technology copied, and this approach paid off. Our company, though small, accumulated wealth comparable to listed corporations. When the president retired, and I was nominated as the successor for my role in the patent, I thought about declining, but being recognized for my efforts felt genuinely good, so I accepted. Being treated as an outlier in a workplace filled with college graduates, I never felt inferior. Instead, I earnestly sought advice and studied diligently to acquire the necessary qualifications, which might have been one of the reasons why my superiors were fond of me. There were qualifications that I couldn't obtain with just a high school education. So I studied for the high school equivalency exam about 5 years ago. Kevin helped me by creating study guides.
If you had gone to college, you would have been even more elite.
People say, acknowledging my achievements. It's nice to hear, but a college-going version of me doesn't exist in this reality. The person I am today is because I didn't go to college. That's what makes me who I am now. The wedding turned into a big fuss and was eventually called off. Lisa declared, "I'm not going back home."
We're cutting ties with my father and planning a small wedding. Please attend, Danny.
She said. I apologized, feeling responsible for what happened, but both Lisa and Kevin shook their heads.
We owe you a lot, Danny. We'll help you with anything you want to do. Just ask.
Lisa asked me if there was anything I wanted. As a president, I feel lacking in education, so maybe I'll go to college now. Maybe I'll even find a girlfriend. I joked. John's comment about marriage and education had struck a nerve.
Leave that to me, Danny. What type of person do you like?
Lisa asked eagerly. She planned to use her extensive network as a company president's daughter, despite cutting ties with her family, reluctantly agreeing to meet someone Lisa introduced. I ended up hitting it off with a charming preschool teacher. Spending time with her was fun, and after several dates, we started dating. Regarding Miller Inc., investigations were conducted to ensure rumors didn't remain just rumors. The final straw was when Lisa left her home and saw John involved in suspicious money dealings. It led to the decision to cease our contract with Miller, and soon after, their wrongdoings were exposed, and they went bankrupt. Despite losing everything and being unable to pay off their debts, when John came seeking help, I politely refused and blocked his calls. My girlfriend and I often talk about the future now. Marriage and children seem within reach.
You need to focus on your happiness after all the hard work.
She tells me. Just imagining having a family of my own brings a smile to my face, much to her amusement.